Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to today's session. My name is Julio and I am the facilitator. I just wanted to run through some housekeeping really quickly. The session will end promptly at 45 minutes. The session is being recorded. You will be muted when you're not actively speaking. Please use your share screen. Excuse me, that's for the presenters. The question and answer session, you'll be able to ask the presenters questions. And without further ado, I give you our presenters.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julio. So welcome, everyone. My name is Christian Brown, and I am one of the regional admissions representatives for Augustana College, based out of Rock Island, Illinois. So we are here today, the three of us, to basically talk about the topic of college search advice as a first-generation person. So I will turn over to Rebecca to go ahead and give her introduction as well.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. We're really excited to be here with you all and sort of be able to relate a little bit more, right? I think sometimes you think that admission counselors, sort of don't go through or can't relate to that college search process. So my name is Rebecca Hernandez. I'm an assistant director with DePaul University. And again, I'm super honored to be here with Jen and Christian. And we hope to provide you some really helpful information to get you through the next couple of months.
Hi folks, my name is Jeanette Von Hayden and I am also a regional admissions counselor and I'm here with Marquette University.
Awesome. So we are going to go ahead and talk a little bit about kind of what we plan to cover for today. So Jeanette, do you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, so on your screen, you'll kind of see a run through of what's going to happen today. We're going to start by talking a little bit about being first generation in the college search process. What does that mean in terms of your application? What scholarships are available to you and what resources do you have access to throughout the process?
And then we're going to talk about financial literacy. So I know it's something that maybe you sort of start thinking about or have heard, older siblings, parents talk about, but there's something really important to keep in mind as you're going through the college search process, and we'll cover where and at what points you're going to be or need to be cognizant of financial literacy.
Then we'll move right on into creating your community, both your community at your college and how does your home community change being the first generation student and kind of navigating that whole process.
Yes, and then our final point will be really talking about what is that defining your first gen experience, right? So we hear a lot about that, and I think today we'll hopefully break down a little bit of barriers and then some enlightenment to what that should look like, hopefully for you as you have your upcoming college search.
But now that you've heard from us and who we are, where we are coming to you from, and you know a little bit about what we'll cover in a minute, we want to take a minute to get to know you. So we've got some survey questions that we'll kind of go through in the next couple of slides. But on your screen, you should be seeing that website, www.menti.com. So if you want to pull out a smartphone or if you can open another browser on your computer and go to that website, it's then going to ask you to insert a code. So the code will be right at the top of the screen here. It's 124256. Again, that's 124256. So we will go ahead and start the survey. Don't rush. You have plenty of time to get into Menti to participate with us. But the first question today is, what city are you tuning into from? You know this is an event for Illinois families, but where are you at specifically? So we've got some folks from Chicago. Awesome. And like suburbs. Oh, exciting. Awesome. Juliet, Aurora, welcome. Okay. All the way up to Gurnee, welcome. Okay, so we'll go ahead on to the next slide. If you haven't gotten it in yet, don't worry, you can still join throughout this. But next up, what are you? What year in school are you? If you're a freshman, junior, senior, sophomore, maybe you're a parent or a guardian tuning in looking for some advice, or someone who works with first generation students. Where are we sitting today? Quite a few juniors and seniors. Awesome. This is like the perfect time to be joining in on these presentations. I myself did not do that and could have benefited. Okay, great. All right, so kind of the next couple of questions are going to talk a little bit more specifically about our topic today. So do you generally know what it means to be first generation? Seems like most of us have a decent understanding. Okay. Cool. So it seems like most of us have a decent understanding, but just so everyone is aware, the general understanding of what it means to be first generation for most universities, you'll want to check at some universities, especially when it comes to like scholarships and things. But generally being first generation means that you are the first person in terms of your parents, maybe older siblings or legal guardians, who is the first to actually earn your bachelor's degree. So for example, myself, my mom technically was admitted and started school, but dropped out in her first semester and did not earn her bachelor's degree. So hopefully that helps give you some understanding. All right, do you identify as first generation? Yes or no? Oh, of course the responses are not gonna show. My hunch is that most of us identify as first generation. All right. Thanks so much for participating. We're gonna turn it over to Rebecca now to talk a little bit about being first generation in the process.
Alrighty, everybody, thank you so much. So yes, what we're going to talk about are going through what resources already exist, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about things that happen in your high school, how your high school can support you, and then community-based organizations, along with one that I do want to just quickly point out that we will also cover is parent and mentor relationships, right? Where do your parents fall into all of this? We'll talk about admission and scholarship benefits, as Jen mentioned, right? There's a lot of scholarships to keep in mind once you go through the college search process that are going to be only for first gen students. So how do you find those? Where are they? And then just quickly making sure that you do qualify for what they deem as first generation. And then what resources exist in colleges, right? So we understand that right now we're talking about the college search process, but we also want you to remember some things to keep in mind once you get there, right? It's not only about recruitment, it's also how can you be successful for those 4 years and graduate. That's really that end goal. Perfect. Awesome. So as we mentioned, we are not new to this process. We empathize with this process, but we also know firsthand that it's difficult, it's hard. And so we each want to share what we learned and sort of the thing that we wish we would have known through our own college search process. So I went to DePaul, yes, oddly enough. And for me specifically, I was the first one in my family to receive my bachelor's. And the quick pictures that you see, that one is my graduation picture, and then the one on the right-hand side, or your right-hand side, is from my first position on campus. So it was actually my first job on campus, was working in the admissions office. Who would have known I would have ended up there long term? And so I just quickly want to share with you, as we move to the next slide, to talk about financial literacy. So some of you may be wondering, like, what is financial literacy? So the true definition of financial literacy is understanding effectively how to use various financial skills, including personal financial management, budgeting, and investing. Now, how does this relate to the college search process? Is the first one is you may want to have that conversation with your parents. Now, what is that conversation? It's not easy. It's not going to be easy, but maybe right now, if you have any parents or your mentor or someone helping you through that college process, to have the conversation about, is there any money saved up to help me? Will I be doing this on my own? So will you be taking the full financial burden of the college process, right, of what your tuition is fully going to cost, and if there's any out-of-pocket cost, is that going to be under your name or is that going to be out of pocket? So really having that conversation about, let's say, yes, your family can contribute, how much, right? How much is out there? And then keeping in mind that if you're going for a bachelor's, that's 4 years. If you're going for an associate's, that's 2 years, right? So ensuring that you're also counting the amount of time that you're ideally going to be thinking about this. This is your future. So really finding what's the best fit for you. So think of building these lists of schools. Sometimes you might be considering this solely on a financial aid basis, meaning that you're going to look at the net tuition, right, of a school. So don't just necessarily look at that big picture out-of-pocket cost, right, of that tuition sticker price. Also do some research on what scholarships are you eligible for. And then you can take a look at, okay, now reducing that ideally, what am I really truly looking at that out-of-pocket cost? Look at scholarships for institutions. So as you're meeting with institutions, maybe you're doing virtual info sessions or one-on-one meetings, ask how they provide scholarships. Is it solely just on academic, meaning merit, right? Or are there any additional ones that are maybe based on service and leadership, based on you being left-handed versus right-handed? Trust me, they are out there and there are going to be many. Other forms of financial aid that you might want to think about, if you're FAFSA eligible, if your parents have no idea, please make sure that you're having those conversations with your high school counselor. Really, us as admission counselors as well can help you as well. But knowing FAFSA is one of the ones that's very important. So that's where you're receiving federal aid. Your CBO scholarships, if you're partnered with any community-based organizations, they may offer additional scholarships for you as well. And then what happens when you get there? I want you to keep in mind that so many of us as first generation students, I completely understand the struggle. We may be working a job right now. You may actually be like, I am 30 minutes into my break at work. I'm about to go to work after this. That is real. Some of us were there, and we were there through the college application process. While we were in college, we're going through that as well. So as you're maybe having a part-time job right now, if there's a safety net, if you can save up a little bit of money just for any emergencies that may pop up, books, a new computer, social life, right? You want to go out, you want to have fun. Make sure that you're including that, that you're applying for jobs on campus, and that you're also reaching out to the financial aid office. So if there's one office that I want you to remember is a financial aid office, and then if there's another office that supports first generation students, because they might have additional scholarships for you outside of what financial aid may already be providing for you, that assistance that they are providing for you. And the last thing that I want you to keep in mind is that it's a journey, right? You're maybe not going to get it all right away, but I want you to keep in mind that this idea of finding scholarships can happen throughout your time at DePaul, at Augie, at Marquette, at any other institution that you decide on. So just keep that in the back of your mind that you can always look for scholarships. They're going to be smaller, but that is something to keep in mind to help ease that journey for you. And so now I'm going to kick it off so that Jen can share a little wisdom as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Rebecca. So I work for Marquette now, but I actually did not go to Marquette. Back when I was making my college search process and making my decision, I chose to attend UW Stout, which is one of the UW system schools up in northern Wisconsin. Let me tell you, it was cold year round, but it was such a great experience. I myself was also a first generation college student. As I mentioned, my mom started and then dropped out for various reasons. My dad has been a lifetime truck driver. And so through the process, we weren't quite sure what we were doing. My mom was also super sentimental, as you may experience yourself. And she had to take pictures at every moment, which now looking back, I'm thankful. In the time I was mortified that she was being so adamant about pictures. So you'll see me packing all of my stuff up for that first semester of college. It fit in the back of a truck. And then I also was able to participate in undergraduate research, which is my top photo there. But the thing that when I reflect back on my 4 years is this idea of community. And I went to a small high school. I graduated in a class of about 100 students. So I knew everyone that I went to school with. We had all been together from kindergarten up until graduation. And when we got to that senior year, it was kind of a mixed bag about what students were going to do next. Some of us went off to four-year institutions. Some of us left the state of Wisconsin. Others chose to go the technical route or chose not to pursue education at all. And so what I started noticing in my home community is that I didn't feel as connected to some of my closest friends because no matter what they chose to do, we all lived different lives. We all had evolving interests, and who we were supposed to be and who we were becoming was not the same person we were in high school. And so for me, I almost felt a sense of guilt. And when I talk to other first generation students, there is also that sense of guilt of, I'm leaving my family behind, I'm leaving my friends behind. And as someone who went to school 4 hours away from home, it was very difficult for me to kind of balance this and wanting to be there with my family and friends at home, but also realizing I'm creating a new sense of community. So know that if those feelings start to develop, that's totally normal and it's totally okay. It's going to have to be a balance that you learn to explore yourself over your 4 years, and know that it's a give and take. My biggest takeaway, my biggest recommendation is make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that are going to support and uplift you. That who you were in high school is not who you have to be in college or as a professional when you graduate. And to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who are going to support that growth. And also think of what you're doing for the next generation, whether that be in your family or in your high school community. If you're a first generation student, what you'll find is that you're kind of a trailblazer. It's exciting and there's a lot of fun things that happen. And I recognize it in my own family. I had a younger cousin who ended up going to Stout as well. And it was really fun to see his journey and to see him also explore college. And it was really exciting to know that I might have had a role in that. And even in your high school, I reach out to some of my teachers and hear that so-and-so is also looking at college and they want to get in touch with me because they don't know how to do the process, right? So know that you are an example within your family and within your home community. So you totally got this, and know that you can build that bridge. You can merge the two really successfully. I know my college best friend Snapchats my mom more than I do, which is really fun to be able to have both of these communities, these identities kind of merge into one and be really successful. So make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that are going to uplift you and stay positive, and really help you continue that growth, because college is about more than just earning your degree. It's also about all of those outside experiences and that growth that can happen. So hopefully that helps a little bit. I'm going to turn it over to Christian, who's going to share a bit more about her experience.
Thanks, Jeanette. So yeah, mine is kind of an interesting story as well. I thought it was really interesting when we sat down and talked about this presentation, how we all very quickly had three very different takeaways from our first gen experiences. One thing that was all very similar was that picture with our parents who were like, we're going to get this picture because you're first gen and this is exciting, right? So you will have one of these one day if you're a first gen student. So make sure to put that in your to-do list, take that photo at graduation. And I think for all of us, it's just a really exciting moment, right? It's a moment of just tears and sweat and everything that went into, you not knowing what you were doing, and all of that equaling this really awesome experience that happened at the end. I think the other two pictures on here are kind of meaningful. I went to a middle-sized public institution, grew up in Tennessee. And one thing that was interesting for me as a first-gen student for my family, we decided that staying local and for me to go to college that way was the most affordable. It worked well for my family. My mom was able to get a discount as a state employee. And for a minute, it made me feel kind of like, oh, I haven't succeeded and I'm first gen. I don't know what I'm doing. This isn't success. And it ended up being just an amazing, amazing experience, debt-free experience, because those actually apparently existed, which was great. And I think as a first gen, it really took for me identifying you are the person who defines your experience. No first generation experience looks the same. And that was kind of the thing that stuck out to me from my whole graduation, undergrad opportunity. Also, the other things in that picture, we're kind of thinking about the person in the corner. Oh, it's okay, Jeanette. The person in the corner, Ms. Twyler, she was literally my Upward Bound director, who I still text randomly to this day and have conversations with. She was super instrumental, and she was someone that I was able to take with me through college because I actually did stay kind of in the local area. Every time she comes to Chicago, we meet up. So again, it's really thinking about who are these people that are helping you create a really positive narrative. And then also thinking about one of the highlights, I think, for me in undergrad was being able to be secretary for SGA. Number one, I didn't know SGA even existed in college, so there's that. And two, when I think about this photo, I was the only person who didn't have a parent that went to college. And so thinking about how this might not be something you necessarily think about when you go to college. You might not be thinking, can I do things like SGA? Can I do things like be a president over an organization? You can. You might be the only one there with your background, but it's absolutely attainable. And I think because of that, it's exciting to tell other students and hopefully see you end up in those positions, specifically as first generation students. So we can go ahead and move forward, Jeanette. Awesome. So what are the actual tips is what you're probably looking for. So number one thing that I think I always say to families, first generation is a general term, right, for a general experience. It's something that us in higher education, folks who work as college admissions folks, higher ed people in general, use to just really identify certain students. And we do that to identify the services you're going to need, the support that we feel like you're going to need. But it's not to say your situation or your experience will be X, right? And I think sometimes when higher education, you hear folks talk about first gen, at least in my experience, having been one in college, sometimes it's a little negative, right? So it's like you don't know what's happening. You didn't have the experiences you needed. Your parents didn't know what to tell you about college. So it's going to be rough, right? That's usually kind of how we tend to talk about first gen sometimes. I think what I challenge you all to do is to flip the script, right? Say, oh my God, I'm first gen. I know nothing and I'm excited to learn everything, right? What are my resources? What are the things that I can do to really strengthen myself and know that I'm going to make it through this process? So taking a positive approach is kind of how we say it in higher ed. How can we look at things from a positive approach? Also turning your barriers into opportunity. I remember being a freshman student and being like, okay, I have got to work somewhere. I too, like Rebecca, also worked in the admissions office. That's how we all end up here, apparently. They get us early. So worked in the admissions office. And the only reason I ended up there was because my summer job that I had in my local community at a law firm was ending. Like they just couldn't hire me anymore. I was like, I need income. So what did I do? I walked around and literally said to folks, I'm first gen and I need a check so I can stay here. And I found a job, right? It was one of those, this is my situation. I'm a really good worker and I'm willing to get out of it, but I need some help. It took, again, using a barrier, putting it on the forefront and saying, how do I fix it? Not necessarily, oh my gosh, I just had this barrier. And then one of the things I think too, thinking about the earlier side with Ms. Twyler, for my CBO from high school, one of the things that happens is I always get called back to work with her program, right? And at first it was like, oh my gosh, Ms. Tyler, you keep calling me for stuff all the time, wanting swag, wanting this. And as I got older, I started to realize that is what I owe to kind of the folks who've invested a lot into us as first gen students. You're going to have people who are going to be literally Johnny on the spot to get you all the assistance you need, help you with financial literacy, help create the community that Jeanette is talking about. And it's really, really great when you too, as the person who had all of that assistance, can start to become the person who is helping the generations in front of you. Believe me, when you see someone who's graduating or even just considering college, who you know would have maybe not have considered it without some of your push and drive to help in that process, it is absolutely fulfilling. There's no other feeling like it. And so I hope that, as you think about, and I know because you all will succeed, even if you're first gen, if you're not first gen, everybody's going to succeed. Everybody who wants to go to college is going to make it. And when you get there to that point, I hope that you can think about, how can I either physically or by example be the example, right? For the folks in my hometown, for the folks at the schools maybe that I attended, for folks who are just, you're going to meet in the future. So I think that's one of the things that it's not just a 4-year experience, it becomes a lifetime experience. And I think, thinking about how can we continue to invest in those and be the person who we hope to help us when we get through those situations is the best thing you can do as a first-gen student. So we'll go ahead and move forward to the next slide. Awesome, awesome. So here is our information. So we realized we only have 45 minutes today because they told us we only have 45 minutes today. So we want to be mindful of that. But the three of us are really great wealths of knowledge. Again, we've all had very different experiences in different places. We have a lot of professional experience that can help. So we hope you'll reach out to us. But we also want to leave a couple of moments for question. And I know Rebecca is going to moderate that process for us. So I'll stop talking and let you get on the roll.
Yes, and these can be open-ended questions. These can be specific to what one of us mentioned. This can just be like, I'm completely lost. Where can I get started? I'm a junior and I feel like I'm in this alone. Whatever that might look like, there is no right or wrong question here. This is a safe space. And again, please feel free to add those questions in the Q&A portion that you see right below.
So Rebecca, as we kind of wait for questions to come in, I do want to talk a little bit about the resources that are accessible to you right now as a first generation student. Because you're definitely not in this alone. You have the three of us, but you also have so many people around you right now that can help support you and kind of get you on the right track, especially as you're navigating the college process in a pandemic, which is an absolutely not normal year. So make sure that you're reaching out to your high school counselor to talk about maybe community resources that are available. Maybe there are some Upward Bound programs that you aren't sure of or haven't heard of before. There might be other community-based organizations in your town. I know a lot of you are in Chicago, so there are a ton of community-based organizations that you can get involved in. And also look at some of the family and friends that surround you. So you can always look at, of course, your parents may not have all of the answers, but they can at least help you start formulating some of those questions. Maybe reaching out to aunts and uncles who perhaps attended, or older cousins, things like that, to really start talking about the process. And I know we're starting to get questions in, but I think that that's a really good starting point for a lot of you, to start asking those questions to the people that are in your circle now, to start expanding that circle of resources.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, and so to answer a couple of the questions, and I'll kind of bounce it between one of us and Christian and myself, and Jen, excuse me, but one of the things that I quickly just want to point out is that yes, colleges do value that an applicant is first gen, and I say this within higher education overall. Really it's more than likely that there's a lot more students that identify as first gen, right? That identify as students of color. Right now we're focusing on this first generation style of approach. And so I want you to just take that with that positive affirmation that yes, we do value you. And then we're going to help you kind of sort of ensure that you're also valued at that institution, right? Because you bring a lot of value to any institution that you are going to, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But if Jen or Chris, if you, Christian, do you want to take, let's go with, I'm a junior and I would love advice on how to start looking into colleges and scholarships. I'm not sure where to start. So maybe specifically on maybe scholarship end. Jen, I know you mentioned a couple of ways to get connected with colleges and CBOs, but maybe answering that scholarship end as well.
Yeah, so there are a lot of great scholarship websites and services out there that you can start exploring. The one that we always recommend, and by we I mean admissions counselors, is FastWeb. It is a database of all scholarships. So like if some company in North Dakota wants to give a student a scholarship for $500 because they write with their left hand, it's honestly a really inclusive database of scholarships. And scholarships are a continued process. So you can start that now as a high school student, sometimes as juniors, but more often as seniors. You can also continue that through your time in college. So I always encourage you to keep looking for scholarships outside of the college or university that you're at. So FastWeb's a great one. I know College Board also keeps a running list in their Big Future section of scholarships. IACAC, oftentimes we've got scholarships that we can partner you with and share with you. So there are a ton of places to get started. I think your best resource right now as a junior is your high school counselor. Even if you haven't met that counselor yet, make an appointment. It's probably going to be virtual, but at least start that conversation now to get started.
Yeah, and Christian, do you want to help answer the question? You know, every school identifies it a little differently. I know for DePaul specifically, first gen just means the first person in your family, but within your generation line. So for instance, my siblings and I would be a generation. So even if my sibling got their bachelor's degree, the fact that my parents didn't would still consider me a first generation student. So I know some students had questions about, you know, hey, you know, what if my older sister got her master's? What if I had another sibling who did? You are still going through that experience yourself without having that sort of guidance, now ideally right from your sibling. But does Augie see it differently, or have you heard anything differently that maybe we can help clarify for the student specifically?
Yeah, no, Rebecca, I think you are spot on. I think most campuses would feel the same way. On our campus, we even have students sometimes who'll come to campus and say, me and my parents are in college, and they might be graduating by the time that I finish. And we're like, but you know what? When you started, they hadn't graduated. So we would still look to that as, yeah, like you said, your generational line. That's an excellent way to explain that. So I wouldn't be too worried that your sister went on and did wonderful things and was being magical. You get to be magical and still be a first gen student too.
Christian, I'm going to toss this one over to you since I know Jen answered that last question. What was the most difficult thing in your transition from high school to college?
Yeah, I would say that's an interesting question. And I'm going to answer that from two parts. First part is just a general college student. I think the hardest thing for me was just really getting a grasp of the study schedule, right? So in high school, your classes are very, very laid out. And you know, usually I went to like a seven kind of, we had seven, whatever it's called. I can't remember what they call it anymore. I've been in high school so long. 7 classes a day, let's call it that, was how I did most of my high school. And so I knew that I just had to get homework done, right, for all of those classes by certain days. In college, you have potentially 2 free days in between your classes being set. And really having to figure out, how do I balance the schedule of doing the work, asking for help with getting some of that work done, and still really having a great experience. I think for me, that was the biggest kind of thing I really had to get over. I learned it about junior year. It was a little late, but I made it. And again, I graduated in 4 years, so you could do it too. But it takes a little bit of practice. It takes a little bit of, trial and error, but it is definitely something that I think now, if you can learn as a high school student, will make your transition so much smoother. The second part of that is as a first-gen student. The hardest thing to get over a transition from high school to college was knowing that I deserve to be there. That was honestly the biggest thing. You see students around you who, again, everybody in their family's been to college. They seem like they know what to expect. Maybe they don't, but they act like it. And you get kind of bogged down with that after a while. And so I think really, again, having those practical things of making sure you know study style skills, knowing how to make sure you can handle the work and ask for help when you don't. And then also just telling yourself, I deserve to be here. They wouldn't have admitted me if I didn't. And that's a really big part of the mental part of making sure you transition smoothly.
Yeah, really great. I know a couple of other questions that were on here. So some you all are receiving private answers to, just felt they were a little bit more personal. But for another student, someone is asking, and again, grateful for these more like beginner questions, right? Like even just how to get started, right? Maybe misconceptions that we're also breaking down about the college search process. Someone is asking, do you have to pay to apply for college? I heard that was a thing. I don't know about the whole process, but at least for applying, what are the differences and how they may be different as well?
Jeanette, you want to answer that?
Sure, I'm happy to answer. So generally a search is free. So you can conduct searches for free and start looking at colleges. When it gets to the application process, you will see that some universities do have an application fee. However, there are so many application fee waivers out there. So at Marquette, we do not have an application fee in our application at all. So anyone is welcome to apply without paying. But at most universities that have application fees, and they can range anywhere from $10 up to $50 or $60. It really kind of varies on the institution. But the application fee waivers are plentiful, and oftentimes they are for low income, maybe first generation minority students and families. And so most of you will probably qualify for some sort of application fee waiver through your high school. I know some schools will waive your application fee if you're on free or reduced lunch at your school or qualify for that at your school. So there are so many application fee waivers out there. Or universities will offer like, hey, if you apply during this first week in September, we won't charge you an application fee. So when you're starting the application process, start looking at those schools and seeing what their specific rules and requirements are about that.
Yeah, and so I think to this initial point of where we were talking about, we first checked in and we said, how many juniors, how many seniors are here? A couple of sophomores. There's a lot more juniors here, right? And so and with seniors. So what I want to mention is that for my juniors, right, we talked about that first touch point maybe right now for you, maybe your high school counselor. It may be that CBO, that community-based organization. A couple shout outs to some that we've, really partnered really well with, like a Chicago Scholars, a Gear Up, College Greenlight. These are some bigger CBOs, but there may be some smaller local to your area. The second part of this is still related to juniors a little bit, but more so specifically to seniors. This is where I would now advise you, us as admission representatives are also now your go-to person. Not that we're not for juniors, sophomores and freshmen. Please reach out to us if you want to. Yes, we want to get to know you. We want you to learn more about the college process, maybe specifically at our own institutions. I do not believe there is an earlier time. Like, the sooner that you can get started with just the search, the better it is. But for my seniors specifically, we are here to not only answer questions about maybe DePaul specifically for myself, but I've met with students where, they have their parents on Zoom with them and they're like, Rebecca, I'm interested in DePaul, like a little bit, I have some questions about your major, but I also I'm the first in my family. I don't know where to get started. Maybe my counselor's a little busy right now. It is a crazy time. We are all going through it. So know that we are just another resource for you that can be specific to the institution, right? Ideally, but we can also answer some general college search admission related questions for all of you. So know that we are now just an additional resource for you. And so when you find a school that you're interested in, I heavily advise you can do a quick Google search, or you can go on their own website, type in admissions, and you can see who the admission representative for your specific high school is. So keep that in mind as you are navigating that search process, or you can email the general admissions email and say, hey, I am looking for a representative for X, Y, and Z school. Just need help answering a couple of questions. So know that we're here for you and happy to help. Back to Jen's response here. I had a student who followed up about, do we have to ask for that waiver at a school, or do they give it to us right away?
Yeah, so you will want to ask for that. What I would recommend doing, though, is working with your high school counselor to get like the NACAC application fee waiver, because oftentimes there can be one application fee waiver that you can then submit to multiple schools. So that way you don't have to go through the individual process at each school. But yes, it is going to be specific, and it is something that you have to ask for or initiate. It's not something that is automatic at most universities.
Good question. Good question. Awesome. And then lastly, I know we've been talking a lot about scholarships, so I'm so glad that we are mentioning these things. And this is where again, and it's not to point at us as admission representatives, but all of these sessions that you're currently attending, if there's any other IACAC StriveScan sessions that you're really interested in, I advise you to attend them, because there you're going to get a chance to meet many different admission representatives from many different schools, in-state, out-of-state, international even. So make sure that they're there to help you. And so you can reach out to them for any specific questions about scholarships that they offer to FirstGen students. That would be the first one. But I know there's some students that have questions about any other good scholarships for FirstGen students, right? know that some may be titled FirstGen, but others, it may be a requirement. So this is where sometimes I recommend students, you may need to do some digging, right, in terms of their qualifications for that specific scholarship, right? So know that that is just something else to keep in mind. But one way to start is the scholarships for specific institutions. The other ones would be those specific scholarships from community-based organizations, right? We mentioned a College Greenlight. They have a really great, helpful resource for all Illinois students, even out-of-state students. They also have a list of external scholarships you could qualify for. Some of us as institutions have a list of external scholarships that you can apply for. So know that this is where asking for help is also a skill that we are, even as adults, still learning. And something that I just encourage you to do is the more that you ask those questions, we can point you in the right direction if we don't have those specific answers for you.
And I might also just add one small thing, because I know we're running really short on time, but when you think about access to scholarships and things, I challenge you to not just think about those dollars as physical scholarships that go to the university. That can be organizations on campus. I was in a program that covered my books. Books are expensive. And so to get free books from this program was almost like getting a scholarship. So again, I challenge you to think about services as money and how that's going to bring down your costs, and not just, oh, it doesn't say scholarship. That's okay. See what other services they offer, because it can add up in very different ways. Laptops, books, all kind of stuff. You'd be surprised.
Awesome. Yeah, everybody keep trickling in if you have any additional questions. I know we are at about four minutes. Is that correct? Yes, 4 minutes left. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to add them in the chat box here, and we can definitely answer those for you.
Trying to see. So there was a question, I don't know if it went away, but there was one about scholarships specifically for FirstGen, which you kind of talked about, but there are also programs specifically for FirstGen as well. So don't forget about those. Those can be, again, just like, again, we're thinking about services, not always just dollars, but what can the support that can come out of that. I know on our campus, we still have something called Augie FirstGen. It's all the first generation faculty and staff do a mentorship program. So we wear shirts so you can know who we are your first week of school, so you don't have to feel weird about, I need to ask a question to somebody who understands. So looking for those types of programs on the campus as well, for whether it's you, the student, or you have children or grandchildren that you're working with. Those are really excellent things to look for. So again, hopefully you just think about all of this as you don't have to know necessarily everything. You'll never know everything, but you do have to know what to ask for. And so thinking about keywords is FirstGen, asking for services, support. Those are all excellent keywords to use when you're talking to your college admissions folks like us, so that we can get you paired with the right services and things to help your experience be better.
Yes, any other questions that come down? I think as we wait for any additional questions that come in, Jen or Christian, any last remarks, sort of just, this is definitely just a weird time for all of us. So what I do just want you all to keep in mind is, as you're going through this process, if you do identify as FirstGen, take a breather. There are more students like you than not. And I just want to share sort of that piece of wisdom, is that you may be surprised how many students maybe right now in your Zoom room are going through the same thing you are, and having those same questions, having maybe those same conversations with their parents, with admission representatives as well. So just wanting to let you know that you are not alone in this process. There's a whole community behind you, advocating for you and wanting to support you.
Yeah, I read a fun statistic, kind of a way to wrap up, that 1 in 3 college students in the coming years are anticipated to be first generation. So you are going to have so much company in this process, and all of us are here to help you out. As Christian said, we want to help the next generation to be just as successful. So you got this.
Awesome, awesome. So we have like 10 seconds, but basically just stay magical, folks. You are enduring a whole bunch of stuff and you're gonna make it. Basically, we did it, you can too. It's literally that simple as that. So if you have follow-up questions, feel free to contact us, take a screenshot, take a picture, whatever you gotta do with your phone really, really quickly, and then let us know that you were in this presentation, and we'll be more than happy to assist in any way we can. So thank you so much to Rebecca and Jeanette for joining me in this presentation today, and we look forward to hopefully coming in contact with many of you in the future. Bye, y'all. Have a good evening.
Wonderful. I think that's it. Right? Pablo? Oh, did Christian leave already? Oh, yes. Christian's like, I'm out. See you, Jen. Bye.
Again, thank you so much for joining us today. We will be sending out a quick survey at the end of this presentation so we can hear your feedback. Please do go ahead and sign up for more sessions. And always remember that recordings of this session will be available. You just need to go to www.iacac.org. Thank you.